Hello and welcome to Spardha Lines, your one-stop destination for the civil services preparation, UPSC, KPSC and other relevant examinations. Today we have picked up a couple of important articles from the Hindu which are very significant from your UPSC and KPSC examination point of view. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article here is speaking about enhancing representation for a just electoral system. What is this article speaking about? The article here is speaking about the representation of the members of the parliament as well as the legislative assemblies in India. So the author goes on to feel that the representation right now is not equal with respect to the population. So what we have to boost is the number of parliamentary seats as well as the state assembly seats, and in order to accommodate them, what we require is right number of MPs for the right number of population in the entire country. So the author here substantiates couple of examples from couple of states and also brings into picture what is the way forward to enable representation for the entire country. Let's look into the data given by the author. The author says an Indian member of parliament is said to represent 2.5 million citizens on average. This is with respect to the Indian parliamentarians. So what do? For every MP that we have in India, how many people does he represent? He represents as many as 2.5 million citizens, which is equivalent to 25 lakhs. So one MP in India is representing as many as 25 lakhs individuals. In comparison, a US House of Representatives member typically represents approximately 7 lakh citizens. So when it comes to United States of America, it is about 7 lakh citizens. So one MP will represent about 7 lakh people, but in India, it is about 25 lakh people. Similarly, in Pakistan, a member of National Assembly is a representative of approximately 6 lakh citizens. The ratio in Bangladesh is closer to approximately 5 lakh citizens. In this year so far, India has around 4,126 members of the Legislative Assembly and 543 Lok Sabha MPs and 245 Rajya Sabha MPs. There are few parliamentarians and assembly member seats responsible for the citizen welfare of India. So the author in this particular case goes on to say the number of representatives that we have in the Indian Parliament and in the state legislature is comparatively less when you compare and juxtapose with countries like United States of America, Pakistan or even Bangladesh as well. So what the author requires and requests is to bring a boost to these numbers. So the population for every member has to reduce. As of now, it is about 1 MP for every 25 lakh people. This has to reduce, and over a period of time, this number which should be equivalent to that of what is in United States of America or Pakistan or Bangladesh. While India does have innumerable grassroots politicians, 1000 plus municipal councils, corporations with between 500 to 100 wards and approximately 2,38,000 panchayats according to Press Information Bureau, then with between 5 to 30 members on average at the national and the state level. So the author says at the local level, what we have is enough representation, but when we look at the larger canvas of MP and MLA elections, these numbers are very abysmal and we have to increase the number, says the author. So what is the root cause issues of all these places? That is where the author brings into picture what is called as the concept of malapportionment, and in order to give boost to this, that is the malapportionment has to be removed, and in order to change that, what we have to bring is new delimitation, says the author. Now the concept is what is malapportionment? Let me explain this with the help of an example. Let's say for example, in the state of, let's say, Tamil Nadu, or let's say in the state of Karnataka, or let's say we compare this with the state of Uttar Pradesh. In the state of Karnataka or in the state of Tamil Nadu, hypothetical example, since we do have the representation in the Uttar Pradesh as well as in Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, what we have is the MPs. So one MP, I'm sorry for this technical glitch, let me change this. Okay. So for one MP in the state of Tamil Nadu, or for example in the state of, let's say, Karnataka, we have one MP. How many people does he represent? Let's say hypothetically, he represents about 10 lakh people. This is just for the sake of simplification. I am giving you an example so that I can explain you the concept of malapportionment. So this single MP may represent about 10 lakh people in the state of Tamil Nadu or in the state of Karnataka. However, when it comes to the number of people in the state of Madhya Pradesh or in the state of Uttar Pradesh, it will be quite high. So what is malapportionment? For the population, what you have is number of MPs who should be having equal number of representation across the entire country. But in the state of Karnataka, it will be different. In the state of Uttar Pradesh, it will be different, which is called as the malapportionment, which means for one MP, equal number of population is not present, which has become the major cause of concern. Why is it a major cause of concern? That is because the delimitation has been frozen as per the 1976 census. So the next time we will be changing is in the year 2026, and that is where we have frozen the number of seats that we would be able to calculate for the entire country. So what is the author trying to say? As of now, what we have is malapportionment. In order to overcome this, what we require is the delimitation. So what is the author saying? In 1976, during the emergency, the number of local Sabha seats were frozen, with delimitation pushed to 2001, citing ongoing family planning policies with a push to avoiding punishing select states with effective population control measures. Delimitation may have resumed when states had reduced fertility states, enabling parity, but in 2002, the 84th Amendment Act of Constitution was introduced, which froze the number of Lok Sabha seats until the first census after 2026. So up until 2026, what we will have is, despite the increase in the population, we will have same number of Lok Sabha MPs for every other state. For example, when you consider Uttar Pradesh, it is about 80 seats. When if you consider the state of Karnataka, it is about 28. So the number of people whom the MP in Uttar Pradesh is representing is far in excess in comparison to, let's say, a state in Karnataka. That is primarily because number of states in Karnataka, number of states in southern part of India have taken number of family planning policies, so on and so forth, that may not have been initiated in number of North Indian states. So the population that a single MP represents is far in excess in comparison to a couple of states in the southern part of India, which is what is called as malapportionment. So in order to give a boost to this, in order to remove this and prevail so that there is population prevalence, what we have to do is change the delimitation, says the author. So with 2021 delayed, which is more likely to be conducted after 2026, there is a window to conduct delimitation earlier. However, unleashing delimitation will have its consequences. Between 1971 and 2011, Rajasthan and Kerala at 25 million and 21 million according to the population in 1971 respectively have been a widening. So currently, if you consider Rajasthan, it has about 68 million, and if you consider Kerala, it has as many as 33 million respectively. Similarly, in 2019 elections, each MP from Uttar Pradesh represented approximately 3 million voters, while an MP from Lakshadweep represented only 55,000 voters. This is a principle of what is called as the malapportionment. In order to bring a change, what is that the author is suggesting? One, the author is suggesting as soon as possible we have to conduct the delimitation exercise across the entire country. Make sure that we have equal number of people that is represented by an MP. So one MP will represent, let's say for example, hypothetically about 10 lakhs or 20 lakhs, whatsoever is the defined number. This should be equal for the entire country. So this is to be implemented only in the Lok Sabha. For example, in the Lok Sabha, what we can have is this representation similar to what we have it in the US Congress. In the US Congress, we have the US Congress where you have the House of the Representatives, and then what you also have is the Senate. In the House of the Representatives, what we have is this process where you will have population on the basis of which you will have that particular state which will be selected and the number of seats accorded to that particular state. For example, in United States of America, you have California which has the highest number of seats. So in India, what we have in Lok Sabha is, for example, we have Uttar Pradesh, which has as many as 80 seats. So in it comes to population and the MPs, similar such format can be formatted in India, where in Lok Sabha what we have is population and the MPs. That can be held good. But when it comes to the Rajya Sabha, since it is about Rajya Sabha and the state representation, each state should have the same number of Rajya Sabha MPs similar to that of the United States of America as we see in Senate. So in Senate, across the entire states, what we have is 2 seats that are represented, only 2 seats for the entire state. So when it comes to the population, it is according to the House of the Representatives, where the population will be designated as per the number of MPs, and that will be placed in the Lok Sabha. But when it comes to Rajya Sabha, there will be no population consensus that will be taken for every state. Let's say 2 seats would be given or 3 seats would be given, so that what we have is a voice for all the states equally in the Rajya Sabha, and this should not be on the basis of population, says the author. So when we have such a representation, the author also brings into picture another concept. Let's say for example, when it comes to Rajya Sabha right now, what we have is people who can be represented from any state. For example, Manmohan Singh, or let's say for example Nirmala Sitharaman, they might actually cast their vote in the state of Tamil Nadu or in the state of Karnataka or in the state of Kerala. So where do they cast their vote? For example, my vote is in the state of Karnataka. I cast my vote in Bengaluru, but I can also become a member of parliament, that is from Rajya Sabha, from the state of Telangana or from the state of Maharashtra as well. This has to change. So wheresoever my vote is, I should be only be able to contest even in Rajya Sabha from that particular state. So if I have my name in the electoral roll, let's say in Karnataka, I should be getting Rajya Sabha seat only from the state of Karnataka. If I have my name registered in the electoral roll, let's say for example in Rajasthan, I should be able to contest from Rajya Sabha seat only from the state of Rajasthan. This change also has to be brought into picture. As of now, if I am from let's say Karnataka, I would be able to win a Rajya Sabha seat even from the state of Maharashtra or from the state of West Bengal. This has to change. So if my electoral roll is in Karnataka, I should be only be able to contest from the state of Karnataka and ultimately win it, is another recommendation made by the author. Apart from that, what we require is the proportional representation. What is this proportional representation? We did discuss recently in our last week's CNA that what we have is a concept called as the mixed system when it comes to New Zealand. So what happens in New Zealand? You have 2 processes. One is the first past the post system, the other is the proportional representation. So in the first past the post system, a certain number of seats are reserved for the MPs, where they would be able to contest the elections. Whosoever gets the maximum majority, they would be able to win the elections. Then we also have proportional representation, which means a certain representation of the voters is given for the political party. So let's say about 100 seats are reserved for the political party. 4% of the vote share goes to one political party A, 5% of the vote share goes to one political party B, 6% of the votes goes to another political party C, about 20% goes to political party D. So the representation of the political parties in the parliament will depend on the vote share that they have got. So the author in this particular case also says that if there is a possibility, the proportional representation as per the vote share of the political bank, as per the vote share of the political party, can also be thought of when it comes to Indian elections. The author further says that what we need to have is small states for the sake of administration. The last time that the State Reorganization Commission was set up was in the year 1953, creating nearly 14 linguistic states and 6 union territories. Now, in order to make it more number of states, what it will help is in the administrative mechanism. So in order to give a boost to the administrative mechanism and efficiency, the new state reorganization may be set up after the next election to evaluate the socio-economic and administrative viability, and we can create states like, let's say for example, Bundelkhand, Gorkhaland, Jammu, Karnadu, Kongunadu, Mithila, Saurashtra, Tulunadu, Vidarbha, so on and so forth. So in order to increase the efficiency of the states, we can make use of dividing the states further into the smaller states, says the author. This can also be thought of, and every census town may also have a fixed tenure mayor elected in direct elections, so that even at the local level, at the municipal level, what we have is complete decentralization. So the author says that if we are able to bring such a decentralization process across the entire country, what we will have is more representation, and what we will have is real federalism in picture, decentralized process, and what we will have is more accountability, says the author. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about community rights and forest conservation. The article here is speaking about the forest conservation. So what we have to discuss is with respect to the Forest Conservation Amendment Act of 2023 as given under this article. We will also look at what are the changes that have been brought in the Forest Conservation Amendment Act. We will look at a couple of aspects of development versus sustainability factor. We will also look at community rights. What are these community rights? Rights that are given to that particular community who is staying in the forest, right, which means the indigenous communities. That means the tribal people. Those people also have had rights because they have been living in the forest areas for a very long period of time. In order to give boost to them, in order to give them new set of rights, what are the rights accorded, what are the changes that have been introduced is what we will be discussed under this article. Recently what we have had is the Forest Conservation Amendment Act of 2023. So once you look at the colonial laws from 1865, we have had couple of laws in place. So from the colonial forest law in 1865 to the Forest Conservation Amendment Act of 2023, more than 15 laws, acts and policies have been formulated. Critical issues of climate change and deforestation's adverse effects. So what does it mean? It means that from the year 1965, we have couple of laws, welfare mechanisms, policies, schemes, laws, rules, regulations that have been created. These laws, rules and regulations have been pictured in such a way that it is only with respect to the forest rights, but then we have had number of landmark judgments that have changed the very idea and fundamentals about the forest rules. And at the same time, we have also had forest laws, rules and regulations which has been able to change the climate change factors as well. For example, if there is a particular area in the Forest Regulation Act, if it is able to reduce or mitigate the impact of climate change, such changes have been introduced in the forest laws. And at the same time, if something is increasing the emissions, or for example, if the forests are felled or chopped off, that is also being regulated under the Forest Rights Act. So from 1865, what we have seen is a major change when it comes to the forest. So the author in this particular case says that in 1865 we did not have the aspect of climate change, nothing of that sort happened. From the real change that is happening is from 1972. So after the Industrial Revolution took place, number of developed countries took advantage of the climate change manifestations, and only when the developing countries started bringing changes, what we have also seen is changes in the ozone layer as well. We have seen ozone holing. What we have also seen is number of issues with respect to the climate change. What we are seeing is increase in the groundwater. What we are seeing is changes in the Arctic and the Antarctic Ocean, where there is increase of the oceanic water. This is ultimately gobbling or eating away number of countries as well. For example, Maldives is one such country, Mauritius is one such country. Because of the increase of the oceanic water, these countries or their areas is getting gobbled up. So in order to take all that into picture, what we have is the Forest Conservation Amendment Act, where they are focusing on critical issues of climate change and the deforestation adverse effects. So the Forest Conservation Amendment Act is basically taking into picture the climate change factors as well as the deforestation. This is one part. That apart, this article also says that when you look into the Forest Conservation Amendment Act, it primarily focuses on the economic gain rather than the prosperity of the indigenous community. As per the amendment, the forest law will now apply exclusively to areas categorized under the 1927 Forest Act and those designated as such on or after October 25, 1980. The Act will not be applicable to forests that were converted for non-forest use on or after December 12, 1996 and land which falls under 100 kilometers from the China-Pakistan border, where the central government can build their linear projects to establish security infrastructure and facilities for surveillance. The central government is authorized to construct security measures in areas up to 10 hectares. This provision also applies to areas which are designated as vulnerable. In fact, ecotourism projects, safari projects, environmental entertainment and more are also being supported. What does this mean? This means that the government is giving more importance to economic activity rather than the forest conservation. Let's say for example, what is the major issue? The major issue is some of the private lands were converted as the forest lands. This was according to one of the landmark judgments delivered by the Supreme Court of India in 1995 and 96, where private lands, in case they were private lands, they had huge swathes of property which had lands which had forested kind of environment, such were also characterized as forest lands. But now this has been changed. In case it is a private property, they will not be considered as a forest land. That is one of the change. In case there is a linear or a security related projects that is supposed to come close by to the forest areas, they can create that as well, especially along the India-China border, and if need be, they can also bring security related infrastructural change along the forest areas. So this ultimately means that the government is giving more importance to the forest areas only for those which have been originally envisaged so, but not if it is a private area, and even for the defense and other economic related activities. The author further goes on to say that when it comes to one of the landmark judgments, we have the Godavarman Thirumalkad case, which was with respect to the Nilgiris and the Western Ghats and couple of other forests in the southern part of India. So according to the Supreme Court, it went on to say private forests were brought under the ambit of the 1980 law. It restricted forest lots from being used for various non-forest purposes, including the conversion of land for the large-scale industries. And now, because the government has brought in an amendment of 2023 where it has said that private lands cannot be converted into forest lands, and at the same time there will be more measures that will be taken for the economic revival. This means when there is more economic revival, they may also enter into the tribal heartlands, and as a result there is apprehension of the indigenous communities as well as the human rights activists. So if more economic activity starts increasing, they will enter into the tribal heartlands, and tribal people may lose out on their rights in the forest areas are the major issues. There have been no collaborative discussions with the southern states concerning matters related to the specific geographical locations. Government were to remove the forest from the purview of the Forest Conservation Act, it would effectively obstruct indigenous communities from asserting their rights. So the author says that the indigenous communities have their own set of rights. With these measures taken by the government, they would not be taken into their picture. So their consent, their right to consent, whether such activity should be taken into picture in the forest areas, is not taken into picture by the government. So the Forest Conservation Act underwent important amendments in 2016 and 17, which stipulated that prior consent from the tribal Gram Sabha was mandatory for any altercations to forest for non-forest purposes. This is slightly diluted, so prior consent of the indigenous community is diluted in this particular case as well. And the government of India, in order to ensure that there is a particular area, let's say this is a forest area, so it has conducted economic related activities. It has conducted, let's say, a bridge in this area, or there is a highway that is passing in this area, or there is mining related activity in this particular area. So in all these cases, the forest land is converted for the developmental related activity. When forest land is converted for development related activity, it also basically means they are diverting the land. Let's say about 1 acre of land is used, 1 acre of forest land. So similar amount of land somewhere else should be used for afforestation, which means you have felled the lands, you have destroyed the forest in this particular area, so you have to take equivalent amount of land in some other part and ensure the trees are grown in this part of the land, which is called as the compensatory afforestation, which means there is deforestation in one area, so for equivalent amount of land in some other place, what you can create is that particular land with number of trees. This is where there is a lot of ambiguities as well. What are these ambiguities? Let's say for example, there is one kind of forest. For the sake of simplification, let's say there are only banyan trees. So in the banyan trees, what they have is deep rooted and they would be able to control the let's say erosion that is taking place in that particular area, and it has its own share of advantages. Now what if there is a piece of land in some other part of the country which is selected, and I'm also growing trees, but is it the same banyan tree? If this banyan tree has occupied, let's say for example, about half an acre, are the same number of banyan trees even planted in this particular area? No, there have been a couple of other trees as well. So the banyan tree is not equivalent to another tree, and that has become the major factor in the compensatory afforestation. So there is ambiguities in the original legislation and shortage of the available land. Every piece of land that is lost due to afforestation efforts, an equivalent amount of land must be restored elsewhere, but the type of trees are not taken into picture. That happens to be another major concern. So this article goes on to say that we have taken examples of compensatory afforestation. It has its own share of issues. Then forest land is being converted for the non-forest purposes. That is another issue. What we have is a landmark judgment, Godavarman Tirumulkad case versus the Government of India, Union of India. There is a change right now with respect to the law. So the indigenous communities will be the major sufferers. In fact, there is also man-animal conflict as well. Again, it is the tribal communities which have become the sufferers since their rights are not concerned. The man and the animal conflict is also leading to loss of lives for the forest indigenous community, says this article. So what we have to bring is changes in the Forest Amendment Act of 2023, where we have to restore what was originally envisaged by the Supreme Court under Godavarman Tirumulkad case, says the author. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says remission of diabetes desirable, not essential. So the author in this particular case has taken the example of two words here. One is what is called as reversal of diabetes. The other is what is called as remission. What is reversal of diabetes? Reversal of diabetes basically, according to the author, he says if some of the doctors or any of the hospital units are saying that through these medicines there can be reversal of diabetes, this may not be right. Why? Because once diabetes has stepped into a person's life or into a person's body, it means what you can do is reduce it temporarily, and this will not be permanent in nature. So when you say reversal of diabetes, it gives an impression that it is of permanent nature, but when it comes to diabetes, it can never be of permanent nature, but rather it is only temporary in nature. So instead of using reversal of diabetes, we can make use of the word called as remission, and this remission is the appropriate term for the usage with respect to the diabetes, and it is not reversal of diabetes, says the author. So remission implies that diabetes has only gone away temporarily and it is not of permanent nature. So diabetes is not a single condition but consists of several types. There are type 1 diabetes, type 2 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is more hereditary in nature. So the author says that we are not focusing on type 1 diabetes. All that we are focusing is on the type 2 diabetes which has been acquired. So when the glucose is broken down, what you require is the insulin. When enough amount of insulin is not present, when excess glucose is present in the body, that will lead to what is called as the type 2 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is more hereditary in nature, which is passed on from the previous generation to the next subsequent generation. But when it comes to type 2 diabetes, it is the one which is acquired because of the health habits, because of the habits that we have acquired, eating a lot of sugar, eating a lot of food, fast food, so on and so forth. This creates what is called as type 2 diabetes. So the author goes on to say that there are certain individuals with type 2 diabetes who are more likely to achieve this remission. A refers to ALC, glycosylated hemoglobin, which should not be very high. B refers to body mass index or body weight. If it is high, you are more likely to achieve remission due to weight loss. C stands for C peptide, a measure of insulin secretion. If it is good, you can achieve remission more easily. D stands for duration of diabetes. The shorter the duration, the greater the chances of remission. And E stands for enthusiastic individual who is keen to achieve remission. If all these individuals are able to keep up to these factors, they would be able to have diabetes remission, and it is not reversal, says the author. So these are the changes that we have to bring in. So health styles changes and food habit changes will have to be brought into picture, says the author. According to recent Indian Council of Medical Research India Diabetes study, there are currently 101 million people with diabetes and 136 million people in pre-diabetes stage in India. In those with pre-diabetes, preventing the majority of these individuals from developing diabetes for a considerable number of years is possible with just lifestyle modifications. In those who already have diabetes, we should of course try to achieve remission of diabetes. But if this is not possible, meeting the ABCD guidelines of treatment of diabetes will ensure that they can all live long, says the author. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says, Center asks states to use tracking devices on prison inmates released on parole. There were questions in the UPSC where they have asked questions about parole in your UPSC preliminary examination. So it becomes very important we understand the difference between furlough and parole. What is furlough? It is a matter of right, but not many are aware of this. Usually granted after 1 year in jail, maximum 21 days a year. What is a furlough? Let's say, for example, I am arrested. I am thrown behind bars. So let's say I have to meet my family commitments. I am right now in prison, but I do have my family commitments. Let's say, for example, I have my child who is getting married, or for example, there is someone's parent who's not keeping good. So that person has to visit their parent. In all these cases, in order to ensure that they have a family commitment, a certain period of time where they would be able to engage normally with the society is given. And this is a matter of right. So it is my right. So the minute I make a request to the police officers, they have to accept it. So that is what is called as furlough. So furlough is a matter of right where I would be able to step outside the prison to ensure that I am able to keep up with the family commitments and the social responsibilities that they have. So this is a matter of right. So when I make a request to the police authorities, the dear police authorities, please give me a furlough for so many days, they are supposed to give it, and that is a matter of right. But when it comes to parole, it is not a matter of right. What does it mean by it? I can make a request the police officers to give me a parole, but the police officers can immediately reject as well. It is more to do with the discretion of the police officers. So it is not a matter of right. So in furlough, it is a matter of right, but in parole, it is not a matter of right. Granted periodically, but can be divided if there is sufficient reason that it will go against the interest of the society, and parole may also be denied if the competent authority is satisfied on valid grounds that there is no sufficient cause for granting parole or it is against the interest of the society. So in exceptional situations, furlough can be divided when there is a apprehension that this can be against the interest of the society, and this is not and in furlough it is a matter of right, but in parole it can once again be denied, but it is not a matter of right. So the period of furlough is treated as remission of the sentence. What do you understand by this? Let's say, for example, I am imposed with the imprisonment term of, let's say, 3 months. This just for the sake of simplification so that you understand. Let's say I am given a imprisonment of 3 months. So during this particular period, let's say I have my child's marriage. So it requires my presence. So 10 days I have to go out. So this 10 days will also be considered as part of this 3 months. So 10 days I am outside the prison. Ideally, let's say for example 90 days. So in 90 days, 10 days I am outside the prison. It is still being counted as part of the 3 months. But let's say if I have taken a parole. In parole, what would happen? Let's say I am out on parole for about 10 days. But in parole, what would happen? This 90 days, that is 3 months, plus 10 days. So these 10 days that I am outside the prison will not be considered as part of my term and conviction. It means that I have to spend 3 months in the prison plus 10 days because I was out for 10 days when I was on parole. So the 10 days will be in addition to the 3 months. So in furlough, it is considered as part of my conviction, and in parole, it is not part of my conviction date. So grant of parole does not disqualify a person from the right to furlough. The grant of subsequent parole and furlough are subject to police order. Period spent on parole is not counted as remission of sentence. Maximum 90 days a year is granted on parole. No reasons have to be cited for granting the furlough. Let's say for example, it is a matter of right. So if I want a furlough, I will apply for it. Police officers accept it. So I don't have to give reasons for the same, that I am going for so and so reason, I'm going to meet this person, I'm going to meet my family. I don't have to give any reasons whatsoever when it comes to the furlough. But when it comes to parole, I have to give reasons. Reasons for granting parole have to be specified by the jail authorities. That is not the same when it comes to furlough. So these are the major differences between furlough and parole. Now let's look into the next article. This article here gives us a difference between biosimilar and generic. Biocon arm gets nod for ophthalmology biosimilar. So what is the difference between a generic and a biosimilar? The molecular source happens to be inorganic material for the generic, which is making use of the chemicals, and for the biosimilar it is the living organisms. The molecular size will be very small and simple, and when it comes to the biosimilar it will be very large and complex. The molecular structure will be known and well characterized in generic, but it is not so in biosimilar, may not be completely defined or unknown. Immunogenicity is, when it comes to generic, is typically not immunogenic, but they are usually immunogenic when it comes to biosimilar. How will we synthesize it? Structural chemical synthesized to identical reference structure. Compound is produced by cell lines that are similar to but will never be identical to the reference drug structure. What is the route of administration? Typically oral, because these are chemical drugs and these are usually injectable. When it comes to biosimilar, time to market, that is when the product is started, they will have to go through number of phases, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, so on and so forth. So it will require 2 to 3 years to come into the market. It will require 7 to 8 years to come into the market. So the FDA resource Orange book provides information on bioequivalence and the therapeutic equivalence, and this happens to be a purple book according to the FDA resource. So these are some of the changes that we have to see when it comes to generic as well as the biosimilars. Now let's look into the next article. So there was another article. One was with respect to the Delhi pollution. So we have the Swiss called as IQAR. This IQAR happens to be a Swiss-based company. So according to this IQAR, it has basically gone on to say that Delhi has the worst pollution when it comes to the entire world. So there was recently a survey that was conducted, and according to this particular survey, it says that Delhi has the worst polluted city in the entire world. So it says Delhi most polluted city according to this Swiss survey, and according to this survey it was conducted by the IQAR, which happens to be a Swiss air purifier company, and it says because of the toxicity that is already present in Delhi added to what is called as burning of crackers, it has increased the pollution to such a level that Delhi is the most populated city in the world. What are the reasons for it? We have discussed in the last week's CNA, that is daily current affairs session. So kindly look into it. So all that this article says is that Delhi is the most polluted city in the world according to air quality index of 287, followed by Lahore. Then what we have is Mumbai, Kolkata, so on and so forth. This article can only be useful from quoting the examination that Delhi happens to be the most polluted city, but for the rest of the analysis why there is pollution in Delhi, we have discussed in the last week daily current affairs discussion. So kindly look into it. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.